So Phineas and Ferb Rollercoaster. This was the first episode aired. I think supposedly there's other ones that aired. I'm a little confused on that. However, this is the very first episode, and I think it very much establishes the entire show, the format. It's a very formatted show. In fact, I think this show actually sort of reminds me of another formatted show, because I think part of the genius of Phineas and Ferb is not just, how silly and fun it is, which I think is part of it, is that it really used the format as a bouncing off point to do all sorts of crazy things. And you could have some episodes that I would say are actually sort of experimental and weird and different, but because it's so formatted, you can sort of get away with it because the audience is so used to the format. Like, they use that format, like part of the artistic expression was the format itself. I would say that's similar to a show, How I Met Your Mother. I think How I Met Your Mother ended up falling off a cliff because they weren't as smart as the guys who made Phineas and Ferb. We're being honest with you here. The Phineas and Ferb people really didn't. The How I Met Your Mother, those last season were real bad. But I think very 2010s thing, probably because of things like Arrested Development or something, a lot of people would use the format itself to sort of use the actual format to do artistic expression, which I always kind of liked about it. In fact, actually, the reason I got into this show is because my wife was like babysitting like her boss's daughter, like way before we had kids, and we were watching it. And then, like, I watched the whole theme song. It's like really fun and funny. And at the end, Candace goes, "Mom, Phineas and Ferb are doing a theme song or doing an intro," whatever she says. And I was like, my wife was like, "What the fuck is this?" I was like really surprised by it, and I really loved it for that. Yes, also a regular show. Cornbread, I should have, because I love regular. Regular show is another good example of, it's a very formulaic kind of show, but they use it to push it into all sorts of weird directions. I think regular show was better at that than Phineas and Ferb, the weird part at least. But this establishes everything you need to know in the show. You could actually, like, if someone's like, "How do I get into Phineas and Ferb?" You could literally watch this. This reminds me of the SpongeBob pilot, that you watch and you're like, holy shit, they set up so much, you're a little surprised. You expect it to be rougher. I think maybe because animators know how to develop things, but that's a whole other thing. But you get the whole thing, like Candace wants to bust Phineas and Ferb. You get that Phineas and Ferb are like incredible, like inventors, can make all this stuff. You get the whole thing with Perry. You get the whole thing with what's her name? What you doing? What's her name? Isabella. Thank you. I know someone's gonna write in the chat. Whatever. But I think like all of that is so set up that like it just, anyway, I think it like establishes so much. Like, it's pretty remarkable how well this starts off that show. The fact that you can then, like, they have the Candace loses her head episode right after, very much is like, oh hey, we set it up, okay, now we're just doing this now. And I really like the whole bit of the roller coaster, that it, like, obviously, like, it always messes up Doofenshmirtz's plans and Phineas and Ferb's plans kind of intersect in this weird way. It's really kind of a smart bit of like writing and planning and storyboarding and everything like that. But it's really kind of simple. I think it like kind of reminds me of, even like if you look at the Back to the Future movies, how it sort of like explains structure to you so well that you don't really need to think about it, but obviously someone like planned it out very perfectly. And I very much think that's going on here. I like the whole thing, like, aren't you a little young to be have a permit like this? And they're like, oh yeah, we are. Like, the guy's like, okay, and like moves on. But I was like, that's most grown-ups saying, yeah, okay, I guess you are. You did fill us out in crayon, which is not great, but whatever. I like the fun of the roller coaster. This is not like my favorite episode. It does, like, the acting is kind of not as good. It doesn't feel like people are as set in the world, except for Ashley Tisdale. Ashley Tisdale as Candace is really good. Like, she deserves... Toulouse, what are you doing? She deserves a lot more credit for, like, she is a great voice actor. That is a great role. I don't really know her as anything but Candace. I know she's like been in the High School Musical thing or whatever. I didn't really watch that. So to me, she's Candace, and I love her as Candace. She does, like, really out of everyone, even though it says, like, by the way, this is a great cast. Like, why is Richard O'Brien in this from Rocky Horror? I've heard he doesn't have the most nuanced take on certain things currently, but I grew up loving Richard O'Brien, so at the time it was cool. But I love how formatted the show is. I love how well it works. And it works in like, you can watch anyone and know what you're doing and what's going into it. I think it works for like a daily show type of thing, very kind of geniusly, and this very establishes it so well. And I think the roller coaster thing is like, that's a fun thing you'd want to do as a kid, you know what I mean? You'd want to make an amazing roller coaster that takes over the entire city. You'd want those sort of things to happen. So I think it is pretty wonderful when it does happen like that. I've always kind of really liked this show, and I think I like it because you can like rely on it. You can just sit on it. You can rely on it as like, you know, just a regular kind of show to sit down with, but you can be surprised by how much it presents to you and how much it surprises you. I think the Mount Rushmore episode, or Candace Loses Her Head Right After, is good, but I think Roller Coaster is like very good at setting you up to what a standard episode is. So I think it's actually a really, really good pilot. There seems to be some debate if it did premiere after High School Musical 2 or like a different episode did, called like Flop Stars, I think. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. So if you were there, you can tell me later. But I've always loved this show. I think this is a perfect example of what this show is and what it will be. And explains everything kind of perfectly to you, and kind of understands the stakes, understands the world, and understands the rules, and you can move on and go forth, and thus well, you can have a thing right after it. So I love Phineas and Ferb. The Platypus is Controlling Me ever since I've heard it, is one of my favorites. I heard a Not Like Us remix, which was interesting, but I think this perfectly sets it up. And if you ever wanted to write within a format and understand that format, this show is so formatted, but it so has the glee and the wonderfulness of television animation's sturdy formatting. It is exactly really great for that. And I think this just shows like how ready they were to, you know, explain, you know, Phineas and Ferb making inventions, Doofenshmirtz, Perry, Candace, everything is right there, ready to go, perfectly figured out by some great writers and directors. And I think they did a wonderful job setting up Phineas and Ferb, and that's probably why it can continue on to be what it was, because you know exactly what to expect, exactly rely on it, like a good daily cartoon should.